Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. How are you all doing today? Well, on today's show, I'm going to be bringing the founder of a company called Leadspace onto the podcast. And they are a leading B2B Customer Data Platform. And the guest name is Amnon Mishor. And he has designed and deployed innovative global data and AI solutions for some of the largest B2B tech organizations in the world, such as Zoom, Salesforce, SAP, Oracle, and many, many more. But behind all that lies a great story too. And if you've ever sat around wondering what has the vaccine rollout taught us about AI and big data, well, that's just one of the many topics that we're going to be exploring today. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to San Francisco, where we will get the show started. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Neil. Thank you for having me here. My name is Amnon Mishor. I'm a founder CTO for a company named Leadspace, which is a B2B Customer Data Platform.
And you're an incredibly humble guy as well, because I know that you've designed and deployed innovative global data and AI solutions for some of the largest B2B tech organizations in the world. And a few names that I'll drop here, such as Zoom, Salesforce, SAP, Oracle, and so many more. But before we go down that road, can I ask you share your origin story? I mean, can you remember where your passion for technology came from, what lit that spark, and ultimately what put you on this path you're on today?
Sure. So at the age of 18, I grew up in Israel. So, what you do in Israel is that you go to the army. I've been recruited to the intelligence unit, probably what's called A200. Now it's allowed to say this number. It was pretty confidential back then. Kind of the NSA of Israel, if you like. And that opened a huge world to me. And at the end of the day, I spent almost 7 years there. And then I pretty much developed intelligence systems for intelligence officers. And it was like in the early 2000s. Where Google just starting, so the whole idea of big data, data science, this was all very, very new and fascinating, and that's really where everything starts. And I said at some point I told myself I want to do that, but I don't want to spend my life in the army and deal with more of a militaristic problems. I want to go out there and see where I could apply all of my learning and know-how of how to deal with big data problems and maybe help others. And then I realized that big companies probably are getting into this era of big data and data science as well. And I tried different disciplines. I worked with financial services. I worked with competitive intelligence fields, and then. Some very smart people helped me to understand that B2B sales and marketing is an area where I can provide a lot of value. It's very equivalent to some of the things I've done in the past, and it's very behind. And it's very low tech relative to some other industries like that maybe consumer marketing and other areas. So it was a great fit, and that's how I pitched some investors. I had a good PowerPoint presentation, and in Israel, many of the big Israeli tech success came from this A200 unit. So just because the investors know what I've done in the past, they know that I'm taking on a big problem. They'll give you some money to get started. So and that's I got some $1 million from VCs to build the first prototype and then a beta, and then we raised some more VC money. And at some point, I relocated to San Francisco, where everything happens. Maybe today everything happens everywhere. It doesn't matter where you are, but that really helped me to really kind of bring Leadspace, start Leadspace and bring it to where it is today.
Wow, what an incredibly cool story. And I'm curious, with your vast experience from this time heading up the intelligence systems and data mining department of the Israel Defense Forces Technological Intelligence Unit, and after successfully designing and deploying world-class technology to aid the military in catching terrorists, what was it that inspired you to see the opportunity to apply data and AI in another industry too? Can you remember what lit the spark there too?
I can tell you, but then you need, we need to eliminate. I'll try to, to say some things that I feel comfortable sharing. But when you design intelligence systems, and you think about AI, so you work with very smart analysts, very smart people that know how to deal with data and look at it in different ways. And really what you're trying to do is to automate, that's AI, artificial intelligence. So you're trying to basically understand how an expert will do the job and try to build automation, something that can do that automatically in scale, and at some point do it even better than the expert. That's really what I've done in the army and trying to solve for those very high stake life and death problems. And that's really what I do today. I think when you go to the enterprise, no, I'm not dealing with life and death problems, but these are high stake questions that companies are trying to to use artificial intelligence to solve for. And it's not just like spell check or recommend my next search and stuff. So these are big problems that companies asking themselves, what will be my strategy next year? Who are the clients I should really target, and so on and so forth. So I felt at home in that sense. I felt natural that the CEO, the CMO, the CIO, they trying to answer high stake problems, and then I know how it goes. And secondly, I watched, similar to the intelligence, I watched salespeople, marketing people manually doing a lot of the work. And then you find the expert, the right salesperson that knows how to find the right clients on time and how to say the right message and how to assemble all of the data and the information that they need to get in order to do it right. And I said, hey, I've done that before. And AI can really solve a lot of these problems. So that's probably the best, the most I can share about the equivalence between the past and what I'm doing today.
Love it. And of course, here in 2021, then, what is Leadspace? What problems are you solving with AI right now for enterprises?
Yeah, so Leadspace is a B2B, business to business only customer data platform. As I said, big and mid-size and any enterprise, they're really trying to make sure that they are engaging with the right people, the right companies that could be their clients, and they want to make sure that they know everything they need to know about them, so they can engage them in a relevant way. That was always the question, always the problem for B2B companies. And it's in B2B, it's actually much more complex than for example, advertising or talking to a consumer, because the buying process buying journey, if you like, is much more complicated. There are many steps along the way. You're not just engaging with a single person; you're actually engaging with a full buying team and buying committee, and they represent an organization which is also a very complex creature. Think about a big bank, a Wells Fargo. This is it's not just really one company. It's really a bunch of subsidiaries and organizations that each one of them could take part in the buying process. So B2B companies are trying again to find the right buying teams to talk to them in a relevant way, and they run into huge difficulty in really knowing all of the right buying teams they need to talk to, and and know everything about them to target. So Leadspace really helps to build what we call the B2B graph. Take all of the information that a company may already have in many different places and systems and silos, and all of the information that they don't really have because it sits out there. It's public information about companies mostly, but people as well, and bringing it into a single unified graph. So we help them to fix the data and create this graph. And then we help them to run models that to really tell them who is the right person to call, to put an ad in front of, to email, and what's the right thing to say. And that's really what we do.
Love that. And there's so much talk and possibly hype around artificial intelligence at the moment. But I'd love to hear more about the problems that people are having as well as that. And if we look at B2B companies right now, what are the most common complaints that they might have with AI in its current form?
That it doesn't work. I don't think where AI broke through into our day-to-day life through our phones and our personal devices and all of that. I don't think in enterprise we're there yet. This is really, I would say, a new type of enterprise software that is much less deterministic than the type of software that users at the enterprise are used to, and I think they still don't really trust it in many scenarios, especially like in the area that I'm playing in, like sales and marketing, trying to let the machine run it for you or dictate what you're going to say and who you're going to call. I think this is still this very early days, despite a lot of chatter around it. And at the end of the day, I think the biggest issue is that they think it's too black box for them. It spits, it tells you to do something, but it might not be the best thing to do, and it's hard to understand why the AI is telling you to do that. And that's the most common, I think, feedback and that we get when we work with companies trying to convince them to trust the science. So I would say that's the number one issue right now.
And also, many will talk about the problems that they've encountered when they're applying big data solutions to small data sets. So can you tell me a little bit more about what's wrong with doing that, and also the secret to getting it right, doing things the right way?
Yeah, and that's really the what makes B2B so different than when from AI perspective. Most of the problems you're trying to solve with data science in the B2B space are small data problem. Everyone knows big data, but this is really small data problems. You're trying to predict what is your next client, but you just launched a new product. Or you're just a startup company, you don't have enough clients. And sometimes you're a large company selling very large deals, and by the time you close the deals, it takes a year or 2 years, and then you already change your strategy. So what you start to see is that where everyone understands that AI is something that looks on everything you've done before, learns from that to predict the future, to help you do the same task over and over again, but more automatically. It doesn't work that way in B2B because the past is not really the future. It's not what you've done in the past. You can model it and you can predict the future, but the future is already very, 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 very different. And that's what we're still dealing with. But there's ways to solve it. There are ways to deal with it. Can give maybe one example. Again, there's a lot. We could talk for 2 hours just on that topic. But think about Amazon. When they see you for the first time, they don't know you at all, but just based on 1 or 2 purchases or searches that you're doing in Amazon, they can already provide you very relevant recommendations based on their AI engines. How do they do that? They just know enough, not about you specifically, but about all of the products in the world and all the people in the world that maybe look like you. So by bringing a lot of external insights and maybe some expertise around the products you're purchasing, maybe by not knowing you at all or knowing you a little bit, if you look for diapers, they probably will start recommend you some pacifiers as well. So I think the same will apply for B2B AI for B2B. Again, we don't know necessarily, we don't have enough examples of the future clients we're trying to predict, but we're a very small amount of clients. We can already derive very, very cool insights about who could potentially be the next client as well.
And I think most businesses right now are trying to make more data-driven decisions. That's another big buzzword right there. And are there any tips you can offer on how to develop that truly data-driven company today that so many aspire to be right now?
Yeah, it is true that so many aspire to be.
Yeah,
and I've seen the two ways to do it wrongly. One is the analysis paralysis issue, where the entire management from the CEO level, they all decide that we're not taking any decisions without data anymore, and that's obviously not practical enough. As I said, this is building a B2B model that really inform you how to take decisions, what product to build, what message to put in front of your website. It's hard. This is not an easy task. It takes time. You need to fix the data. You need to model small data problems, bring a lot of external data, all of that thing. So you need to really choose your battle and really decide which area you're really going to focus most of your efforts, and not just say we're data driven now. Don't take any decision without doing this analysis, because again you'll fall into the analysis paralysis problem. But I also seen the other end, where companies aspire to be data driven, but they don't do anything about it. And so I would say the company, I was blessed to work with some of the leading companies out there that it's fascinating. I cannot share, unfortunately, it's all confidential, but it's fascinating to see how they operate and how they use big data and AI to inform decisions. And you see that it starts from looking on data science and the data as a strategic asset, just like they think about HR. Everyone understands people is a strategic asset, and they have chief human resource officer. Data is a very, very important asset today that can be a make or break for every organization. And you need to start by having a chief data officer and think strategically about how you're handling data, where do you apply it, and how you maintain it, and so on and so forth.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a bit of research, and it quickly becomes apparent that throughout your entire career, you've been looking at data and the world through this almost scientific lens. And on that point, can you tell me a little bit more about when observing the vaccine rollout, you discovered some interesting connections between the challenges governments and scientists have overcome and those that most enterprise companies face as well? Because there's a few parallels there, isn't there?
Yes, there are. And I define myself as an extreme rationalist. So everything I rationalizing, statistically speaking. I'm a very annoying person to hang up with. And suddenly, in this pandemic, there's a lot to say about it. But one thing that I realize is that everyone becomes like me a little bit. I talked to my mother about risk and reward models and observation about taking the vaccine or going out to the supermarket, and what's the percentages of risk now and before. Everyone became a little bit of statisticians, and suddenly I think everyone understands how I live. So that's one side of it. But the other side is that you see how difficult it is to people to live with uncertainty and live with non-deterministic solutions, and how hard it is to help people to rationalize decisions that are not fully deterministic or 100% guaranteed, and how you explain science and bring science to the masses where again it's a new thing, and it's not 100% guaranteed, or it's probably much better than what you're doing today. And I see how that's what I've been doing in the last 10 years of my life, with specifically in B2B organizations, and now I've seen that huge effort to do it to the entire population. So I saw a lot of equivalence there, and also we talked about small data. You need to roll up a vaccine quickly. Unfortunately, you cannot wait for hundreds of millions of people to go through it to have enough certainty. So again, you need to design your lab in a way that fairly quickly with relatively small amount of examples. You can still get into a highly confident solution that you can trust. And again, in this sense, it's a story of my life. So I saw tons of equivalence between what's going on in general in the world and what I'm doing on my day to day.
Love that. And earlier this year, I should also point out that Leadspace raised, I think it was 46 million to bring big data insights to B2B sales. Can you share your vision for the future and how the funding is going and how that's going to improve things for you guys?
Yeah, that's it's going great. Before we took the additional investment, we already worked with the most sophisticated companies out there, and we brought fairly sophisticated solutions to fix their B2B data and to help them find the next client, basically. And what we really needed now is like a large amount of investment to take that to the masses, and just package and simplify and automate and bring a nice user experience on top of the more sophisticated data and AI engines we built. And bring it to all of the companies out there that maybe are not Salesforce and not Zoom, and they can't afford the technical talent and expertise that these companies bring to the table that make it very easy for them to adopt. So really, we brought a new management team. We invested more in our R&D and our user experience kind of area, and we hired more marketing and sales team. So again, we're bringing the promise into many more companies out there right now, and it's going great and it's super exciting.
Fantastic. And time to have a bit of fun with you now, because a question I always like to ask my guests at the end of the podcast is, we've heard about your life story, what put you on this path, but what song has inspired you in the past, or piece of music has helped you in your career, or just helps you get your head in the zone before going on stage, or reminds you of your career in tech, or accompanied you in that career? Is there a song and a story you can share with us? And I'll add that song to our Spotify playlist. Is there anything you can share?
That's an interesting question, Neil. So let me be a downer a little bit, because my music preference ends at somewhere at the 1905. I'm a big classical music kind of fan. That's really what I care about. So I'm not sure you want to put that on the playlist, because I'm not sure I have. There's many other people out there that will want to listen to that. But if I need to call out a few pieces that, as you said, may inspire me, or so Mahler the Fifth, I came across the music through the movie Death in Venice, and I listened to this music and said, wow, this is like different sound, different music. I never heard that. It was stuck in my head, and then I kind of started to dig in and went to a live concert of Mahler the Fifth, and as most of the audience maybe fall asleep at a classical music concert, I was all awake listening and to the music and deep into it. And then I like Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto No. 2. It's energizing and beautiful and amazing. And I can say classical music in general. I've just been last week in a concert again after 2 years of a stop, and it's the more I think about it, it's so resembling what I usually do, which is like, on one hand, it's very scientific and complex and structured, but what you get at the end is something that is art, and it's something that speaks to your soul, and that's really what I'm trying to do in my life when I build products for people. So that's really the best answer I can give your question. Sorry, I couldn't find a specific song.
No, not at all. That's a perfect answer. I think we often overlook just how powerful classical music is. Like you said, it can speak to your soul, incredibly moving, and also it can be great for allowing you to focus on specific tasks as well. So completely with you, 100% on there. But before I let you go, for anyone that wants to find out more information about Leadspace or have any questions, what's the best way of finding you guys online?
Yeah, keep it simple, leadspace.com, or Amnon, A-M-N-O-N at leadspace.com, or you can find me, Amnon Mishor, in LinkedIn. And I'm happy to be in touch with any person that is listening to that and want to understand more about us, about Leadspace, and so on.
Well, I think we've covered so much in a short amount of time today, from what's wrong with applying big data solutions to small data sets, how to get it right, the common complaints that B2B companies have with AI, how to develop that truly data-driven company, but more than anything, all washed down with your fantastic, very human story and career in technology. So thank you for sharing that with me today.
Thank you, Neil. It was a real pleasure talking to you today.
What a great story. And I just love how in 2010 he founded Leadspace to help Silicon Valley's biggest enterprise companies take full advantage of customer and prospect data, which then was their most valuable business asset. And also in that time, I do think we've seen companies that don't take this serious see data go from being their biggest asset to their biggest liability. And I'm sure many of you have some insights to share on that too. So please, as always, keep your messages coming in at techblogwriter@outlook.com. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. I want to give a very special shout out to my friends at Hirect, who are sponsoring the Tech Talks Daily podcast this month. I always say on every episode that technology works best when it brings people together. And the recruitment industry is one of those areas in need of an upgrade, because the headache of traditional hiring often involves countless emails, checking spam folders, and waiting around for replies. And Hirect are using technology to solve this very problem with the free app where recruiters can chat directly with candidates. And in doing so, they're no longer spending hours in their email and waiting around for responses, and can simply view resumes, exchange contact info, and then have an interview, all in seconds. And not only that, you get curated candidate recommendations, you can chat directly with candidates and accelerate that hiring process up to 10 times faster. So not only is Hirect using technology and this smartphone app to solve these problems, they're using tech to bring people together. But best of all, the app is a free download on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. So please check it out. Let me know your thoughts. And you can do that by emailing me at techblogwriter@outlook.com. But we've reached the end of another episode, so all that's left for me to say is a genuine warm thank you for listening to this podcast every single day. We've got more listeners joining our community on a daily basis at the moment. And again, just a reminder, message me. I'm the easiest guy in the world to get hold of, and we can have a conversation off and away from this podcast if you desire, or come on here and join me, whichever is easiest for you. But it's time for me to go, so until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.